Welcome to Portland Conversations. I am Jason Allen, and today we continue the conversation about the upcoming Portland elections. Hey, today we are with Multnomah County Commissioner, Position 3, Jessica Vega Pederson. I got the Peterson right. Give me 5 brownie points. Jessica, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jason?
I am well. Are you and yours staying safe?
We are. We're staying safe at home here, all 4 of us.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm excited to talk about issues and policies at the county level.
Sounds great.
Excellent. All right. Let's talk about leadership for a moment, especially through trying times like this, in the middle of the COVID crisis, and then when we plan to come out of the COVID crisis. Explain to me how the county commission can lead the way to kind of make things easier and smoother for Jack and Jill, Portland resident.
Yeah. I think leadership is such a crucial concept that people are thinking about right now, because we've had some really blatant examples of incredibly good leadership in the world that we've seen, and like really awful leadership in the world that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in my opinion, I think at the federal level, we're not having the leadership that we need of addressing this in the right way and addressing in a way that makes people feel confident that we're going to be able to get through this together as a country. So I think that makes it even more important that at the state level and at the local level, we're doing everything we possibly can to get people through this crisis together, and making sure that we're taking care of people, especially those people who are the most vulnerable, who are being impacted the most on this, as best we can. And, for those of us on the Multnomah County Commission, we have a role as elected leaders. We're also the local public health authority. So we have the public health role as well. So we're definitely been really grateful for the amazing leadership and the really smart people that we have working in our public health department. And the chair, Deborah Kafori, has been doing an amazing job helping lead this work at the county too. And I know that it's been very important that, as the most populated county in the state, we're making sure that any steps forward that we take are done with sound footing in the science and the health policy as we move through this. And we're doing it in concert with what's happening at the state level as well, to make sure that we can go forward together in the way. I think that where we are right now, we've been looking, I hear from people every single day about how this is impacting their life. I mean, we're all experiencing it, right? I mean, there's the 4 of us here during the day. My kids aren't at school. My husband and I aren't at work. We're here together, just like so many other people. But I hear even more from folks who are worried because they're a small business owner and they're a child care center, and they don't know if they can open after this. They don't know if they're going to be able to stick through this. We hear it from people who are afraid of what's going to happen when their rent comes due. So, and we hear from people who are really concerned about getting sick and being impacted by this. So, I think the leadership, we have to make sure that we are reaching out to people. We're there for people when they have questions, and that we are, and that we're sharing information as best we can as we go through this.
Yeah, and that really leads me into the second question, is this leadership and how we handle a real more equitable recovery, to make sure it's not, just the people at the very top, that they're going to do okay. But the paycheck to paycheck average, everyday family that are finding it, I mean, just almost unmanageable at the moment, and especially with no leadership at the national level, looking towards the municipal and the county level and state level to really kind of guide. At the Multnomah County level, how is the commission? I mean, I know this is a kind of a daunting thing to ask, but how is the commissioners going to help take the lead in steering, at least at the county level, building back up?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think that's one that we're all thinking about really, really thoroughly. So, the county is responsible for actually delivering a plan to the governor and to the state about what our plan of opening is. So those are like active conversations that are happening about, how are we going to be ready? Are we going to be hitting all of the different, basically outlined requirements that the governor's put forward in terms of testing, in terms of contact tracing, PPE preparation, all of those things. And then what's that going to look like every day for us as we start going out and, making sure we have a safe distancing and people are wearing masks and things like that, right? So we're thinking about that, and we want to make sure that, especially for people who are having to get out and get to work, that we're taking the right steps to get things ready.
Yeah. Especially for the recovery, because to me, I get this feeling that this is going to be a rolling thing. I think people think that when we start to reopen stuff back up, hey, everything's best, everything's better now. Let's go back to, square one. We're fine. But I keep hearing the virologist talking about, well, next fall, next winter, we're going to have a second spike. Things are not all right, in Neverland, So, I mean, I imagine at the county level, the commissioners, I mean, you guys got a forethought and plan ahead through, how do you tackle that?
Yeah, the county, our most critical work that we do is really the safety net services for the most vulnerable people in Multnomah County, right? So that's everything from people who are unhoused to our seniors, to our families and children, to people with disabilities and people, in jail and in our criminal justice system, right? So we're thinking ahead of trying to figure out how are we going to be responsive and how are we going to be able to provide the resources that people are going to need so much coming out of this, because all of the things, all of the inequities, all of the disparities that existed in society and have existed in society for so long have been like just cracked open so wide because of this. And we're seeing this in who's being impacted with COVID-19. It's people of color. It's and you're seeing that across the nation in different communities here in Oregon. We're seeing that with communities of color, with the Latinx population for sure. We see it in who's impacted economically and who is really impacted right now today. People who are already struggling with rent and the high unaffordability of housing here. And so, this is work that we've been doing at the county. These are issues that we have been facing, and we need to, we're going to continue to charge ahead and really be thoughtful about making sure that we are taking care of the most vulnerable and we are centering people who are being impacted the most on this.
Right, because I think one of the key issues as we come back from this is, as you said, it has been blown wide open. I mean, the spotlights are on the most inequalities, and to me, one of the chief ones is affordable housing. I mean, not even to mention homelessness, right? Yeah. Just the affordable housing, and I really think with the layoffs and just the economic turmoil that's going on, I think that is going to be something that a lot of people have put in the back of their minds that's going to be quickly shoved to the front because rent doesn't stop.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's stopping a little bit, right? We did put measures in place to have no evictions for 6 months to make sure that people have some space, but that rent is going to be due eventually. And that is something that I know is weighing on people's mind. And it's something that we're all thinking about. I think that's why, at the local level, we also are pushing our federal delegation and we're pushing Congress to make sure that there's relief for people, because it can't just be for giant corporations. It just can't be for, people who have stock in the market. It has to be for everybody who's really experiencing, just really terrible impacts economically day in and day out. And they're struggling to make rent. They're struggling to make sure that they can pay their own bills. Right.
And on top of that, as we climb out and families are maybe so far underwater that they either have to sell or whatever, how do we stop, because I know in 2008 and 9 when we had the last, recession and crisis, that when a lot of times when people sold, the prices leaped because developers would come in and the sharks would come in and gobble things up and then jack the prices up to almost unmanageable numbers. How can the commission, how has you as commissioners address that to make sure things don't get out of hand?
Yeah, I don't know what the county's authority act, is very specifically around that, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, when we saw coming out of the last housing crash, we saw hedge funds and investment banks coming in, buying up properties, buying up apartments, buying up all these rental properties. So now that instead of having a landlord who, maybe lives in the duplex next door or who is here in the, a local person, you've got these big investment, trusts that are owning all this property. And now the homes where people are living are treated like commodities. Right. And that's not a way to build local connection. It's not a way to really knit our society and our communities together. So it's definitely something that I think, we have to be aware of, and we have to, I think, encourage programs that help people into home ownership, help people make those steps into either holding onto their homes or getting into their homes so that they have that security, and we're keeping those bonds local. Yeah,
I guess it all stems back to the good leadership, right? Being able to help be a voice to advocate, to keep people aware, of that. Along, I guess, hand in glove with affordable housing is the homeless situation. Mm-hmm. And I know that is really one of your strong passions and issues. Talk to me a little bit about moving forward with that in mind as we come out of this crisis.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things there. I mean, this has been the heart of the county's work that's been done over the past several years. It's one of the ways that I think the county responded so quickly and strongly in the beginning of this crisis, is to make sure that for the shelters that we're in charge of, that we weren't going to be having a hotspot of infections happening in the congregate settings of the shelters, by opening up, multiple new locations where we could have safe social distancing, and we could make sure that if there are people who are exhibiting symptoms, that they were moved out of that and were getting the help and the testing that they needed. That was something that we did really quickly. I think as we move out of this, we have to remember what you were saying before, that we're not just going to come out of this and be done. This is going to be a dance that we're going to take some steps forward. We may have to come back some steps as we see infection rates go up, or we get another round of this. And so we're going to have to keep these structures in place. And all of that is in response to the coronavirus, but we are also still, working on the underlying issues that lead people to be houseless in the first place, which means, supporting and building more permanent supportive housing, making sure that the housing we built has access to wraparound services that people need, so that issues that people have with behavioral health, mental health, addiction are being addressed, that they have connections to workforce training. All of these things that have been that we've been working, we need to continue that work. And I will say that this May, there is the opportunity for voters to support a measure that really is looking at making a long-term permanent investment in addressing this issue through the Here here together measure in the metro region. And so I'm supportive of that. I voted for that, and really encourage people to do that. This is a huge way that we're going to have resources locally to really put some dollars into programs that's going to address the issues that people are facing.
Excellent. Let's move on to climate change and green policy.
All right. One of my favorite subjects.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I've seen the last 3 or 4 years at the national level, all the rollbacks of all the ground that we made through the previous 8 years. And I mean, that's got to affect Multnomah County at some level, right? Because, I mean, national trickles down, and then you almost got to fight your own fight to keep things progressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we absolutely have. I mean, we, on the very day that Trump pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Accords, that is the day that my board passed a resolution that says we will have 100% renewable energy in Multnomah County by the year 2050, right? So we were moving ahead at the local level, even as the Trump administration was moving backwards and really taking us backwards in terms of fighting climate change and going in the wrong direction for the country. So, but this is not, the fact that we did that in Multnomah County is wonderful, and we'll keep doing that. But it's, Oregon has been a leader for years in this kind of work. Prior to being on the Multnomah County Commission, I was in the state legislature. So I was in the Oregon House, and I was the chair of the House Energy and Environment Committee. And while I was there, we passed 2 really wonderful bills around climate change. The first is the Clean Fuels Bill, which said that we have to have cleaner fuel mixes in Oregon. So if you're going to drive a car that uses gasoline, we need to have cleaner gasoline in it.
Yeah. And
it set up a program to help incent people who are using electric vehicles or who are creating biofuels and those kinds of things. And we also passed a bill in the 2016 session that said we will have no more coal in Oregon's energy mix by the year 2030, and we will double our renewables that we're going to have in our energy mix by 2050. And those are really 2 really good sticks in the ground saying that we're committed to addressing climate change. And the governor has, even moved that further with her recent executive order saying that we're going to continue to make sure that we're going to put caps on carbon emissions here in Oregon. And that's, and that's something that we can do in our state. And as we have states like California and Washington and East Coast states also doing the same thing, that's when we can make the real change. Because we're not going to see that at the national level, at least for the next little while.
Right. One of the things that I thought was actually a little funny, but the peculiarly funny is during this horrible crisis, we've actually seen areas environmentally get better. And so to me, when I see that, I was like, well, that's kind of proof that, if we start cleaning up our ways and start, a progressive policy, look what we can have. This is proof right here. And I'm just so afraid that people are going to just turn it over to reality TV and just kind of, not really look at it. But
I know. I hope everybody's enjoying being at home and having not so much to do. Maybe enjoying the really clear, beautiful skies that we've been seeing lately. Hearing more birds singing, seeing more nature come out. These are things we can have this world. We can have this world all the time. We just have to make a commitment to changing a little bit how we get around. Maybe take transit more often, or buy that electric vehicle that you've been thinking about, and really, I know a lot of people who have started gardening and not buying as much, during this thing. I think these are all things that we need to take with us. I mean, this is just one part of how we need to change our behavior as a result of this, and really can have some good things come out of this experience. I think the climate and our behaviors around that are one of those things. But I also, you look more broadly at some of these social really these important social programs that have been so needed, like paid sick time, for instance. Oregon was also a leader in doing that, but we've had so many people across this country who are worried about getting sick, not being able to take the time off, having to go in when they're sick. And then this has been such a, and it is a public health issue. It's a public health crisis when you have people who are worried about missing their paycheck or missing work. and then showing up and getting everybody else sick. COVID has really underlined the danger of having those kinds of policies. And that's another thing where I think that this is a great opportunity for in this country to really push strongly for policies that make sense and make all of us healthier and better off in the long run.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the underlying things that's going to really come to the forefront in the next 6 months is mental health. Mm-hmm. As people are sequestered and out of, humans are very social beings, and when we're stuck in our places of residence all the time, the depression levels just must be through the roof, and I worry about the marginalized communities and the people who are paycheck to paycheck, not only physically but really mentally. How the strain.
Yeah, and we're seeing that at the county for sure, right? That was a huge concern going into this, was how people who might already be experiencing some behavioral health issues are going to respond to this like highly stressed environment that we're all living in. But just everybody in general, even if you hadn't experienced that before, this is such a different way of doing things. And like you said, we are social creatures. Some of us thrive on being around other people, and some of us having to stay home and think about like what's happening in this world and what, the being worried maybe about people getting sick. That's a lot for people to take. So it's been really important for us to make sure that people know that there is help out there, that there are resources that people can access during these times, even though you're staying home. There's the 211 information line that the county has that people can always call to get connected to resources. The Multnomah County helpline, the crisis line, has been open and is staffed. So that people can reach out and contact that as well. So the help is out there. And I really appreciate you bringing that up because it's a really important issue. Yeah.
As we were talking about green technologies and climate change, it kind of leads me into just infrastructure in general, especially as it applies to public transit. And really upgrading that system and moving it forward in a more progressive way. Where's the commission and where do you come down on trying to insert more of those green technologies and really moving public transit in a more solid way?
So I'm a huge fan of electric vehicles and transit. I actually just got an email from Hyundai saying it's your 1-year anniversary of you getting your car. And so last May, I got an electric vehicle, something I'd been wanting to do for a long time. It's been mostly sitting in the garage these days, but at least, when I do have to like run to the store or something, I feel good that I'm, keeping those skies nice and blue. I happen to sit at a lot of transportation tables around the region talking about transportation issues. So, so that ranges from how we're spending the dollars that we get from the federal government or from the state on local transportation projects, and also how we spend the transit dollars that we get from the state as well. And, there's been this issue of how we can impact climate with our transportation and infrastructure decisions is a really important one. But what is really important to me is that as we have this conversation, we're not only talking about climate, we're also talking about safety for people and equity for people in our transportation system. And the good thing is things like transit hit all three of those issues, right? As we're making investments in transit and making it more equitable, of getting more lines in places where people need transit and need to rely on transit, we're also getting more people out of their cars, more people into a way that's better for our environment and better for folks. And the same thing with safety. I live out in East Portland, where we have some of the worst, highest death corridors in the state, or, I probably have 6 of them right around the neighborhood that I live in. And so making investments in sidewalks, in better bus stops, and all of these things is a really important equity issue and a really important safety issue. One of the things that I think is going to be is a conversation that's happening right now in light of COVID is, what does transit look like and what does transit use look like moving out of this, right? This is a situation by its nature, you have people come together and share space. So how can we, and as people are as we start opening things back up and as people start leaving their homes more to go to work or go out and about, like how are we able to manage that growing demand with the safe measures that we're going to need to put in place. And so that's a really important conversation. But I think all of us understand the importance of having a strong transit system because of the safety and climate impacts and the equity impacts of it. And so this is something that we need to figure out because we want to have a thriving transit system going forward and coming out of this.
Oh, so much, yes. One of the things I've been really thinking about lately, especially as we move into, from the primary into the general elections and we move forward, is engaging young voters and the younger generation, Generation Z, As a county commissioner, how do we get the young people engaged and say, listen, we need your voice now more than ever?
It's been the incredible thing that I've seen over the last few years is the way that the young people and younger generations are just saying, we don't care what's happening at the national level. We know what we need, and we are going to use our voices and we are going to use our actions to fight and to get it. And that's come up time and time again, whether it is on the climate conversation and pushing for, protecting our future and making sure that we're making decisions, that we're putting policies into place that protect their future, right? I mean, I have two kids. They are Generation Z. My daughter's in middle school. She cares so passionately about issues these days and lets me know it, without any doubt. I've seen that conversation, or I've seen these conversations come up when it comes to things like gun safety and protecting their lives, as they're dealing with this. And we see it in the transportation discussions. I was on an advisory group that was looking at putting a transportation investment measure on the ballot in November. And we had many, many young people show up every single month to tell us what they wanted and what kind of investments they wanted and how they wanted us to be thinking about their future and what we were doing to our planet. So I think that I think it's like all of us could probably be turned off by what we're seeing at the national level, but I'm really inspired and I have a lot of faith in our youth and how they're going to lead us forward.
Excellent. One of the last questions I'm going to ask is about representing everybody. I mean, the marginalized communities who somehow slip through the cracks and who don't have that crucial voice. At the county level, how does the commissioners really promote that and make sure that the umbrella covers everybody?
Yeah, I'm proud to say that the Multnomah County Commission, we are an all-woman, majority woman of color board that we have. I think we're the first in the country to have that. And so there's a lot of us that come from marginalized communities, that come from underrepresented communities, and we are proud to represent those communities. But all of us have the commitment that we are building new tables for people and making sure that people's voices get included in decisions that are made and policies that are made, that perspectives are being considered as we move forward. And again, as we're looking at coming out of this situation and how communities are impacted by this virus, how communities who already have less economic resources, less generational wealth, right, are being more impacted by this. What can we put in place? What can we build, working with them to help create a different dynamic going forward, so that we are fighting against those disparities, that we are championing the issues that we need in terms of getting people the attention and the resources and the voice that they needed. And that's work that we need everybody to be a part of. And that's a commitment we need everybody to make sure that we are able to fulfill the commitments to marginalized communities like that.
Excellent. Hey, let's throw out all the data that we need as far as URLs and anything pertinent that you would like to share with everybody.
Okay, great. So I have a website, JessicaVegaPederson.com. Easy. The Peterson is, well, you can see it on your screen how it's spelled. So just JessicaVegaPederson.com. I'm also on Twitter at JVP for Oregon. And that's also where you can find me on Facebook as well, at JVP for Oregon. So that's how you can find me.
Excellent. Jessica Vega Pederson, position 3. Multnomah County Commissioner, thank you so much for coming on and talking about all what's going on, all the issues and everything. It has been a delight, and so thank you so much. And I hope that you and yours remain safe. And hopefully another interview sometime down the road can be done in person.
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.